Alright, so now we're going to create the network. First of all, we're going to be needing a server, 6 routers, after that we're going to take 3 switches, and then we're going to be taking PCs for each switch. So for the switch 0, we're going to be putting 4 PCs down. For switch 1, we're going to be putting 3 PCs down. And for switch 2, we're going to be putting 2 PCs down. After putting down all the hardware, now we're going to be connecting them all using the automatic connection. Before continuing, we can see that if we try to connect this, there is no fast Ethernet port, which is what we need to connect to the other routers. So what we're going to do is that we're going to increase the fast Ethernet port, and how we do that is by modifying the router using these modules right here. Now this is router 1. We're going to give router 1 the NMFE2W. This gives 2 more fast Ethernet ports so that it can connect to 4 instead of 2. So first of all, we're going to turn off the router, then we're going to put it on, then we're going to turn it back on. We're going to do this for all routers that requires more than 2 ports. Now after that, we're going to continue connecting all the routers and the switches. After that, we're going to be connecting the switches to the PCs. Now we've done connecting all of the hardware together. So after this, we're going to now configure the IP addresses for the servers and all the routers. So let's start with the server. We go to config, fast Ethernet 0, which is the port that the server is connected to. We set it as this. Now after that, we can set the gateway and the DNS. After that, we are going to go to the router now. We're going to configure each and every router, their IP addresses, and we turn on their ports as well. So for this, since it's connected to the server, we're going to be using the address for connection to the server. Turn it on. Now next, we're going to connect router 0 to router 1. The connection of router 0 to router 1. We're going to assign this IP. Turn it on. Next one. And so on and so forth. So after configuring router 0, we are going to configure the router 1. You can see the connection. It is fast Ethernet 00. We're going to make this connect to router 0 by having the same network address and the subnet mask as router 0. Turn that on. This is supposed to be 66. Turn that on. Now we do this for all of the routers. Alright, so now we've configured all of the routers. Now we're going to configure the server's services, and after configuring the server's services, we are going to be configuring the pool for each DHCP pool. For each of these switches that are connected to a pool of users. So first, we're going to start with the server. Now, we don't need all of this. We are going to delete some of these, except for index.html. This index.html, we are going to edit. Now, we don't need all of these. I'm going to add a header to this HTML, and we're going to put a text saying this is a text. Now save that. Yes. After that, we are going to configure the DHCP. Now for the DHCP, we turn it on. So after configuring the DHCP, now we are going to go to DNS, turn on the DNS. Now we are going to give the name of the DNS. Let's say text, and the address would be the server itself. Let's add this. Now after that, we have finished configuring the server. Next, we are going to configure the pools that we require for the DHCP from each PC to work. So let's go to router. We are going to go into the CLI. We are going to connect to the Ethernet that is connected to the switch that is 01. So let's click 01. Now for 01, we are going to use this IP address. with a subnet mask of 27 or 224. Turn it on. Now we have configured the IPv4 address. So next we are going to configure the DHCP pool. Now for the DHCP pool, we're going to type in IP DHCP pool, and we're going to call this area 1. So now we're going to configure its network, which is going to be this IP address, this network address right here, with the subnet of 27 or 224. Yeah. So after configuring the network, we want to configure the default router, and that default router would be the IP address of the router that is connected here. So that's the 21.1. Now we're going to have the DNS server of 8.8.8.8. After that, we have finished configuring the first DHCP pool. And now let's move on to the second one. For the second DHCP pool, same as the first one. First, we need to look at which port is connected. That was Fast Ethernet 01. So on Fast Ethernet 01, we are going to give the IPv4 address of this IP address with a subnet mask of 240 or /28. Turn it on. Now we are going to configure the pool same as before. Now we are going to call this area 2. For this one, we're going to set the network of this IP address. So now we are going to give the DHCP pool of this network address with the subnet of 240 or /28. Next, we're going to configure its default router of the router that was connected here, the IP address of the router. After configuring the default router, next is the DNS server. And now we have finished configuring the second area. So now we move on to the third area. On router 5, we want to see Fast Ethernet 01. So now we go to Fast Ethernet 01. For this, we are going to be using this IP address. For the subnet mask, we are going to be using 248 or /29. Now we are going to turn it on. So now we configure the pool as usual. Next, we are going to set the network. After configuring the network, we are going to configure its default router. After the default router, it's DNS. Now we have configured the final pool, the third pool. So next, we are going to turn on the DHCP for each PC. As you can see, it's correct as its default gateway. And do we see here? Yep, its IPv4 address is working correctly as well. So now we're going to do this to each PC. Now each PC has been turned on with its DHCP, so it should be connecting correctly now. Next, we are going to be routing the routers. So the routers are connected, but they are not routing. We are going to configure its routing protocol using RIP. So in each router, we are going to input these addresses to each router, each and every router. We are going to add all of these network addresses to each and every router. So router 0 as its RIP addresses. Now we are going to do it for router 1, 2, 3 until 5. So that's about it for the network creation. We have RIP'd all of the routers, and I will see you on the network connectivity test.